Coming up, will Danny Wolf be a late-round steal for the Nets after his standout season at Michigan? I'll dive into that after this.
You are Locked On Nets, your daily Brooklyn Nets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into the Locked On Nets podcast right here on the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team, the Brooklyn Nets, every single day. I'm Erik Slater, Brooklyn Nets beat reporter for ClutchPoints.com. Thank you for making me your first listen of the day. This show is 100% free on all those great platforms. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. And on today's show, I'm going to break down what we saw from Danny Wolf with the Nets at Summer League, analyzing the good, the bad, and where he ultimately fits into an NBA rotation long-term. Rejoining the podcast for another episode of Locked On Nets, it's Lucas Kaplan from Nets Daily. We are continuing some discussion about the Nets rookie class, what we saw from Summer League, what we saw on their tapes pre-Summer League, and where we think they can ultimately land in the NBA long-term. Our last episode, we touched on the Nets ball handlers, rookies Yegor Dioman, Nolan Troy, Ben Saraf. We have one more left over who appeared at Summer League, and that is Danny Wolf, who a lot of people might think is the most interesting player or, has the most unique skill set of the bunch. And I think that we saw a lot of that at Summer League, and we saw kind of the struggles and also the gifts that he has of how he can fit into an NBA game script. Just how'd you feel about what you saw from Wolf at Summer League? What encouraged you? What was, gave you a little bit of pause?
Yeah, I wrote about this, Nets Daily. I talked about all the rookies we saw at Summer League, all the guys. I didn't realize how big he was, and I think some of that was obscured by maybe his role at Michigan and also playing next to an even bigger center in Vlad Golden. He's huge for the type of player that he is. I mean, legit 6'11", legit plus wingspan, like thick, 250 pounds, and knows where to be. For all the turnovers and some of the offensive plays where he's like trying to do too much and it just doesn't look right. I think he knows how to, well, that sounds a little condescending, but I was going to say knows how to play basketball, really understands the court and is aware, obviously knows how to play basketball. But that's this, I came away a little bit after, ruminating on it a little bit higher on him. At first you see him have some really bad turnovers and just looking slow and can't jump, and you're like, oh my God, is this just not an NBA player? But then you remember how big he is, you give him some grace, and you're like, you know what? I'm excited to see how this plays out. So that's my overarching, where I am on Danny right now.
Yeah, it's interesting to hear you say that, because I think aside from the last game where he played without Drew Timme, it was not the positive Summer League experience for Danny Wolf, and I think a lot of people probably came away more concerned. So I think a lot of people will probably be relieved to hear you say that. And I fell in a similar boat of I wasn't putting a ton of stock. I just thought it was going to be difficult for Wolf to fit into this equation in Summer League, because we talked about it with Dioman and Traore and Saraf and all those guys about just the limited structure and all of that. And I think that it can be even harder for big men, guys who, are trying to play off of guards and play within a certain role. And you look at a guy like Danny Wolf playing alongside Drew Timme, who up to this point in his career is a non-shooting center, playing alongside two other guards in Nolan Troy and Ben Saraf, who struggle shooting the ball or did struggle shooting the ball in Vegas. I just thought that it was a tough environment, but I did think we saw some of the flashes. And like you said, he is a legit 6'11". He is a big dude. He is a fluid mover, and I think showed some ability to, do some things on both ends of the floor physically. With me, I just had a little bit of trouble pinning down what I think Wolf is going to be at the next level. And I think a lot of front office people and scouts had those same struggles, and that's why he was such a polarizing player throughout the draft process. Because you look at what he can do, and offensively, he's this guy who can handle he hasn't been a high-level three-point shooter to this point in his career, but there's potential there. He was a really good ball handler and did some of those things in college, but the step up to NBA-level defenders is a huge jump. Yeah. So is that going to hold up? Is the three-point shooting going to improve to a level good enough? He's not a lob threat. Let's start on the offensive end of the floor. There has been the conversation of center or big wing ball handler type guy? Where do you see him? Which plane do you fall on with him?
So I think the encouraging thing about Summer League, if there was one, is everybody who watched him at Michigan told me, dude, Timmy is like not the guy for him. He was all of his best offensive passes and playmaking were either 4-5 pick and roll with Vlad Golden, where he could like throw a lob over the top or like find an interior passing angle to a rim finisher. That's not Drew Timme. Like Timme wants to post and handle and whatever. And even his best pass was like a short roll or like a roll, and he finds Timme, at the restricted area. So that I'm willing to give him some grace for. Really weird environment for him, as you said. And then the other parts of it are like his handle is probably the most appealing aspect of his game at that size. There's a lot of questions about the shooting, the percentages, even the passing, a lot of turnovers, but like the handle at that size is really good. I think pretty indisputably. And so we did not really get to see him either as like only big man on the floor, hub, hitting cutters, faking handoffs, stuff like that. So I think that is probably his role. Like can play the four next to a guy like Nick Claxton. Honestly, is the ideal front court partner, a rim roller who can maybe cover for him on the perimeter and keep Wolf close to the basket.
Yeah, not ideal is Drew Timme, who's not a rim roller or a 3-point shooter. Like that's
maybe
not
the worst possible front court partner for him.
Yeah, especially if you have other guards on the floor in Traore and Saraf who do not want to shoot the basketball whatsoever. So like I don't put much stock into what we saw offensively from
and then the other 25% of it is okay, this dude's really big. Like maybe we can get away with some moments where he is like the only big on the floor and we're running. Oh my God, I feel like I'm talking about Ben Simmons again, but like he is the backup 5 and he's running DHO and like hub offense. But obviously Wolf will hopefully be able to do more and put more force on the rim than 2024 Ben Simmons. But that's a real role. That's a real player, especially if like the feel and all that stuff works out and he can shoot a little bit better than the percentages say. That's a real player.
And we talk about, the conversation of, is he a center? Is he a 4? Where is he going to spend most of his time? And I think that it's a valid conversation because you do spend a lot of your time, if you're going to be a high level player, you're going to spend a lot of your time at one position usually, but that utility I think is a lot of what makes him attractive because he's a guy, if the 3-point shooting can come along, you have a guy who can play center and can be a guy who runs. He can be an inverted guy who's running some pick and rolls inverted. You can be a guy also who, if he is the screener, is a short roll playmaker or is a pick and pop option. So if you have all 3 of those things that you can do, that's pretty encouraging in terms of what he can be as a center. So I want to talk about that and also what he can be as a 4. But if you look at him specifically playing a center, which is what we saw him do in that last game without Drew Timme on the floor, it does seem like there's just a lot of possibilities of ways that you can run your offense and kind of put other guys around him.
To nerd out a little bit, I think the appeal of him at center is that this is going to sound extreme, but a coverage breaker. Like switch, he's posting up the small and getting to the rim. And like, that's not a matchup you want. You drop, he's pick and popping to 3. You pressure the ball handler, he's getting in the short roll. You do a little bit of a higher drop. Like he's probably not a lob threat, but can get behind you, catch the ball on the roll and like spin into a hook or draw a foul. We saw him do that a couple times in the last game. So I do think it's reasonable to think, this guy is a screener. And then also like as an inverted ball handler, no matter what coverage you play, no matter what your defensive scheme is, he's going to have a way to get his game off and lean into what he does well. That to me, if you tell me Wolf is a really good, or just a good offensive player in 5 years, I'm going to say, oh, it's because he can, survive. Like there's no coverage that can dilute his impacts. That's a little bit more like focused on a little more granular, but I think that is what Nets fans should be looking for in year 1, if that makes sense.
I think it's a big reason why, I had several draft analysts on the podcast leading up, and they said that they kind of hope Danny Wolf got picked by the Nets just because he's going to get a lot of minutes and they'll get to see him. And they think that he's one of the most fun players in the draft, get to see him, kind of try to fit into all these different ways and have that grace to the team who has him to experiment doing all of these different things, which will be really fun for the fans, I think, and exciting. Offensively, there's just a lot to like there. If we're talking about him at center, and we'll talk about maybe what he looks like as kind of this jumbo wing. Defensively at center, how do you feel about that? Because he's obviously a guy who I think there's concerns defensively at center and at, the wing or a 4. But as a center, he's obviously a grounded player. He's not a rim protector. How do you feel about, it might have to be something where he can't stick there for too much of extended stretches, because I just don't know how viable that is with him as an anchor.
I would say that his rebounding numbers are good, especially playing next to Vlad. I would also say that the most worrisome part of his defensive profile is when he has to do wing stuff. Like there was a play where he's on the weak side and he's like tagging the roll in the paint. The ball gets skipped. He has to close out to the corner for 3. It was so slow. It was just so slow. And that I don't know how much he can fix. But as a center, you could play him at the level a little bit. Like he has good hands. He's long. He seems good at like predicting opponents' movement patterns. Like, okay, you're going to cross over here. I'm not biting on this hesitation. When you shoot, I'm going to get a hand up. You could play him at the level some, improve technique. He could probably play a little bit between 2-on-1. I don't think he'll be like this great, rim protector in deep drop, but, maybe in a higher up drop, get his hands on pocket passes, stuff like that. A gun to my head, I might say he has a better defensive future at the 5. I think so. A part of this is because I didn't realize like how big he really is on an NBA court.
Really interesting player, Danny Wolf. A lot of different ways that he can fit in. We talked a little bit just about the center. There is also another aspect of his game, so we'll get into that. Maybe some player comps, how we ultimately feel about long-term viability after a quick break. But before that, want to tell you about our friends over at FanDuel. Summer sports are in full swing, and whether you're all about baseball under the lights, golf on the green, or high-stakes soccer action, FanDuel is the best way to make every game even more exciting. You're already following the action. Why not make it a little more thrilling? With FanDuel, you can get in on the game while your friends are getting sunburned at the beach. Guys, you can use FanDuel to track your favorite matchups, and the app keeps it fresh with new daily promotions and fun ways to bet. It's easy to use, fast to pay out, and makes even regular season games feel like must-watch events. Whether you're placing a same-game parlay or watching a bet right into the 9th inning, FanDuel makes it feel like you're part of the action. New to FanDuel, new customers can bet just $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Open the FanDuel app today or visit FanDuel.com to get started. Coming back from the break on today's Locked On Nets episode, talking about Danny Wolf with Lucas Kaplan of Nets Daily. And Lucas, we were just talking about the conversation of what's the most likely position for Danny Wolf. He obviously has the utility, but it sounds like if we're talking upside, that you feel a little bit more encouraged about him as a 5 as opposed to him as this 4 or this jumbo wing that people have talked about.
Yeah, and I think I'm talking myself into the defense there, but also that he can, again, some role versatility that against teams where you want to do more 5 out, or maybe there's another rim roller on the floor, like he can morph between that 5 and that wing, like possession to possession almost, depending on what the situation calls for. I kind of gave my opinion on the defense. What would you say? What do you think like his best position, role, scheme, whatever would be when you look at him?
Defensively or just overall?
Start defensively.
I would say center is also. I'm not sure that, I don't think that he's slow. He's not fast. I don't think his foot speed is maybe as terrible as some people like to indicate, but just if we're talking about making the step up and he's playing the 4 or the wing and having to guard some of these guys and he's getting, put in some of these situations where he's going to have to stick on the perimeter like that, I'm not sure how viable that is for him. And because of that, while he has some concerns at center of being a grounded guy there and he's not, protecting the rim or some things along those lines, I just rather take my shot with him in that spot versus having him on the wing. But maybe also you could say maybe if he has an anchor behind him, some of those concerns are a little bit less worrisome of him guarding the 4. So there is an interesting conversation. I just think both offensively and defensively, I see more upside and more utility with him kind of playing the center position. I don't know if you agree.
I think I agree. Just because the jump shot is no sure thing, at the 4, but then again, his best passes are often like to the roller. So
Yeah.
I think I really do want to see him. I think the Nets have been good in recent years about, like, this is going to sound again very nerdy, but like data intake, just playing a lot of, like, they played Noah Clowney exclusively at the 5 all year in Long Island. And then not so much when he came up to Brooklyn at the end of his rookie year, but a little bit. And they decided, you know what? Like, there's a question of if he's a tweener. We just don't think he's a center. We don't think he's in drop. We don't think he's a rim roller. We don't think he's going to be the only big on the floor. Therefore, we're going to like play him as this big wing. I think most Nets fans could agree that was the right call, and they solved it in year 1. I think that was good process from like the organization. I would like to see a similar sort of plan with Danny Wolf this year, because he has a lot of these not overlapping skills, but maybe skills that you don't think quite fit into one solid role. So I am very intrigued to see like what the plan is and how he does with real minutes in the NBA.
Yeah, I just want to say that you don't have to preface by saying this is going to sound kind of nerdy, because you've been on Locked On Nets several times, and the people have given some glowing reviews of you, Lucas. So the people know what they're getting with you. I'd say it seems like, opposed to traditional podcasting, maybe people aren't so into the nerdiness, but the Locked On Nets audience seems to enjoy it. So keep bringing
you guys. All the listeners have been very nice. Much more than what I used to. I think I am self-reflexively apologetic and used to getting yelled at for my opinions on Cam Thomas and the like, but I'm liking it over here. It's a nice little safe haven for me and my nerdiness.
Yeah, and we're going to keep it going. Closing it out on Danny Wolf, really interesting player, and a guy who I've said I've had trouble nailing down. It seems like scouts, front office people have felt a similar way, because the skill set is just unique, and we don't see a lot of 6'11" guys, running pick and roll alongside a traditional center as he did at Michigan. Do you have any player comp for him? I think a lot of people, it's something that maybe people have struggled with. I mean, I've had a little bit of difficulty coming away with one. Is there anybody that you see?
I would have to think someone dropped Mehmet Okur in my mentions. I don't know if I really agree with that, but it's interesting. Okur was like pretty good on defense for a little bit. I think. I might need a little bit more time on that, but I feel like it's on the tip of my tongue, because he's not the first, skilled guy this big, but he is funky and he is unique. Did you have anybody that came to mind?
No, I was asking you because I haven't really come away with one. I think that it's kind of difficult to see guys who do the things, because a lot of the big men we see who are like the white big guys who are really talented offensively kind of play a little bit more of their game out of the post sometimes, or do some of those things. He was a pick and roll ball handler alongside a traditional center. So just, yeah, really interesting player. I don't really have a comp nailed down. Maybe we'll circle back on another pod and, get back to it. But what do you think about just, where are you at encouragement level with him just finding a long-term NBA role? We talked about that with Yeoman, Troy, Saraf. How do you feel about his skills translating, him at least being a guy who could stick in the league long-term?
I think I'm pretty neutral. I don't want to say like I don't think he will be, because the more and more I sit with it, the more I could see it. But I do think there are real questions as to like what his, value is on an NBA court. Is he really going to be a guy dictating this many offensive possessions when he might not shoot and like might not be good on defense? But then again, I can't rule it out. Yeah, as evidenced by a lot of the things I've said on this pod. I just saw a Mo Wagner comparison, which I don't think is terrible. I think Wagner's a lot better on defense. And again, some of it is just like they're both big and white. But like Wagner has actually became like kind of this pick and pop guy, like can drive it off the pick and pops, can, hit backdoor cutters as a hub. Like, I don't think that's terrible, but I'm neutral. I'm like a 5 out of 10. What about you?
Yeah, I think for me, a lot of it's going to come down to the shooting, which is
Mhm.
like we're
Mhm.
like beating a dead horse with this. We got fourth straight Nets first round pick that we've talked about, and like it's going to come down to the shooting, which is interesting for a team that is very 3-point shooting oriented. But I guess that's every team in the league now, or most of them. But yeah, it's going to come down to the shooting because, like you said, I don't think that at best, he's probably going to be, a reserve guy. I mean, I'm not going to say he can't be a starter at the next level, but if he is a reserve guy, which is a likely outcome, is he going to be dictating as many offensive possessions with his ball handling and things along those lines? I think him having the ability to be that short roll guy or that pick and pop guy as the baseline, or just a guy who's spacing out on some 5-out possessions, and then the ball handling and some of the funky stuff is kind of like an add-on. That I think
Mhm.
is much more viable. And that's kind of interesting because like the funky stuff in the ball handling was the most intriguing aspect of his game at Michigan. But in the NBA, you're going against guys who are so much bigger, faster, stronger, more athletic. The windows are so much tighter. I just think that I'm not sure if I see the viability of him being like an offensive engine to that level. So him adding the 3-point shot and being able to do some more of those ancillary things, I think would bode really well for him long term. And then also, at the center position, like we said, we outlined it defensively. I'm not sure how I feel about him really guarding on the perimeter and doing some of those things. So I feel best about him at center. I think a lot of it's going to depend on the 3-point shot, because if you're not a rim or if you're not a lob threat and a rim runner, you need to be able to shoot the ball.
Yeah.
And we'll see. We'll see if he can develop in that area. But we're talking about if you're not a lob threat, if you're not a rim runner, you need to be able to shoot the ball to stick at center. We got one more guy, Drew Timme, that we're going to talk about to close the show, and I think that all applies to him. He's coming off being the best player for the Nets at Summer League, and is a guy who does have some ability to make this roster potentially. So we'll talk about Timme. We'll dive into all that after a quick break. Closing out today's Locked On Nets episode, talking with Lucas Kaplan of Nets Daily about some of what we saw from Brooklyn at Summer League. We hit on all the draft picks, but we need to dedicate a little bit of time to Drew Timme, who came out on fire in the Nets' first 2 Summer League games and really looked great and looked like a guy who could potentially be in the MVP conversation. Ended up playing 3 games. But Timme, Gonzaga star, NCAA star, finally got a shot with the Nets last season and looked like decent in his NBA opportunities, and then signs the contract where he is on a non-guaranteed deal. So he's one of these non-guaranteed guys on a standard deal fighting for a roster spot. Could also sign a 2-way if he gets cut. But I think I kind of expected Timme to dominate at Summer League. But how'd you feel about what you saw from him? Did any of it change kind of how you viewed him?
No, not really. And I don't mean that as an insult. Like, I don't think it's out of the question that he can be a decent, offensively slanted backup big for a team. The skills are real. I think a lot of NBA watchers don't know how great this guy was in college. Like, he was I don't know how much like Gonzaga, I'm sure you watched the tournament or whatever, but like legitimately all time, like post up college big.
Yeah.
So it's not surprising that he's just cooking the hell out of, 20-year-old bigs that are pretty much in college, like, 3 months removed and a couple of open gym runs away from graduating, since graduating or since entering the draft. It was a lot of Drew Timme, but it was a lot of Drew Timme. I felt bad. I didn't write about him on my takeaways.
He was definitely a safety blanket. Like,
yeah,
give Drew Timme the ball in the post and everybody just like space out and get out of the way.
It was
let him do some things there.
It was the C grade version of that All-Star game that one year with the Elam ending. And they realized like, yo, like we have to just like post up Joel Embiid because he'll do something. The Nets, when they would try to come back in Summer League, would be like, all right, like, got to get the ball to Drew Timme here. This is our only hope to score. I don't know. He's gonna have to do more on the short roll. Like the floater stuff isn't great. I mean, I think they told him, listen, you're gonna have to shoot a lot of threes as a pick and pop guy to stick in this league, and he took it to heart. And he did what he has been told to do. He's gonna have to make some more of them, but I'm down with like a roster spot. Guys seem to like him. I don't think there's a 0% chance that this is a decently valuable backup big. What do you think?
I mean, I've heard some people who fall in the nerdier end of the spectrum say that they have not ruled out Timme being a backup big who can stick in the NBA. And I mean, I'm not ruling it out. I mean, he's just so unique in his ability when he has the ball, just the things that he can do around the hoop in terms of, spinning left, spinning right, finishing with both hands, going up and under with English and finishing off. Like, the body control and the touch around the rim is just at such a high level. But it's just like, when is he in those positions if he's playing in the NBA?
Sorry, I did have this point, and it was also kind of relates to Tosan, and I tweeted it. But like, when you're posting up all the time in college or at any level, you can read the floor in a much more calm, deliberate sort of way. You're backing up, you're looking over your shoulder, you're taking your time. Now that he'll post up some mismatches and stuff, but now that he's really like pick and pop, he's kind of spaced, he has to drive a lot. When you're driving and like getting downhill that way, the game and the speed of it is just moving so much faster that you don't really read the floor. So I think his biggest thing to be an NBA player is like, take 30% of the shots you take on drives and turn them into kick out passes. And then I actually do think you're a legit rotation big. I don't know if he can do it. That's a really hard adjustment to make for guys that are used to posting up, see Tosan Owoma, but that would be the thing if you're looking for, okay, I want to see this sign, and then he might be like a real deal NBA player.
And shooting. I mean, he's got to be able to shoot too. I mean, yeah, for me, yeah, that's definitely part of it. And for me, it's just like, you look at him, you look at centers, what teams are looking for from centers across the league. He's a guy who is not a rim roller or a lob threat. He has not been a three-point threat up to this point in his career. He's not a rim protector. Guys who don't have any of those things, like, it's pretty tough to stick in the NBA, especially as a backup big man. And I haven't really seen, was more willing to take the threes, at Summer League. And he said that it's been a big emphasis, and he did it. He's just not making them. So, I guess he had some encouraging stretches in Long Island where he was making some 3-point shots, and I'm not going to rule it out, but I do think that he's going to need to do that. I think that defensively, he's a guy who's going to try to put himself in the right spots. There's just a lot of limitations there, but the things that he does well in terms of his touch, his body control around the basket, and just his personality, it seems like everybody likes him. He is a guy who I feel like has some chance. There's just a lot of things that need to improve there, and they're not necessarily like the easiest things to improve. So
no,
we'll see with Timmy, but I think that he's going to be a fun guy to monitor moving forward for the Nets, and we'll see if he sticks in a standard deal or two-way spots, but I think we'll see some more of him from Brooklyn moving forward. But if that does it, Lucas, appreciate you taking the time. We hit on a lot of people between the Nets ball handlers and these two big men. If you guys don't already, go check out all of Lucas's stuff on Nets Daily. Also hosts the Backcourt podcast with Sarah Kustok. We're going to have a lot more coming up. We'll have you back on. And appreciate you taking the time, man. That does it for today's episode of Locked On Nets. Hope you guys enjoyed the talk with Lucas, touching on Danny Wolf, why he's such an intriguing player, what we expect from him with the Nets long-term. Also, some of Drew Timme and what we saw from him at Summer League. If you guys do not already, make sure to subscribe to Locked On Nets on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts, whether Apple Podcasts or Spotify. If you enjoy the content, smash that like button, leave a comment. Let me know what you think about Danny Wolf's potential. Let me know whether you think Drew Timme should stick with the Nets long-term. But we got a lot more coming up in the NBA offseason. Things slowing down a little bit. We still got contract talks. We still have cap space. We still have all these different things the Nets need to get to. So I have continuous coverage of all that here on Locked On Nets when I'm back tomorrow talking more Brooklyn Nets basketball.